Well, thank you. And welcome to Fireside Chat. My name is Steve Soder. I'm honored to be moderating this discussion with a terrific panel. We've had a chance to meet now in person for the very first time, but had a chance to connect earlier as we were preparing for this. Looking forward to this conversation as we think about how cutting-edge technologies are really reshaping the landscape and what leading organizations are doing in order to achieve their goals, leveraging these technologies. We'll talk a little bit about collaboration as well as about leadership. Wondering if we could have each of you introduce yourselves. And Ilaria, let's start with you.
Thank you, Steve. So, Ilaria Parrella, Emission Abatement Executive Leader in Baku. So I will briefly introduce. So Baku is an energy technology company, and I'm very pleased to be here in COP to present what we are doing climate technology solutions. So it means mainly what we are doing on a broader portfolio solution that we can deploy to tackling climate change. And we will discuss later on. So especially my role is related on methane abatement and efficiency reduction with a broader portfolio solution that we can deploy globally.
Wonderful. Ilaria, thank you. Leia.
Thanks, Steve. Good afternoon, everyone. Leia Barbara, I'm from the World Economic Forum, where I head the climate strategy portfolio. And basically what we do is we get together the private sector and the public sector to try to mitigate as many emissions as possible in the shortest time frame. So more in a bit.
Wonderful. And Mauricio.
Steve, thank you. And wonderful to share the panel with my esteemed panelists here. I'm Mauricio Bermudez. I lead carbon strategy and intelligence at Accenture. Accenture is a global professional services company spanning strategy consulting, operations, technology, digital, industrial applications as well. Within my practice, we help the world's largest companies from strategy to execution on their decarbonization journeys, and data and digital have an enormous role to play within that journey.
Wonderful. Well, as you can see, we've got a terrific panel, and let's jump right in. Ilaria, let's start with you. Baker Hughes has been at the forefront of developing technologies aimed at emissions abatement. And I'm wondering if you could tell us what have been some of the most cutting-edge technologies in this area, and how are businesses using them to drive their impact?
So, as I mentioned before, we have a broader portfolio. So we believe that we need to have a different type of solution, not just one. So when we say broader, it means that we start from CCUS, hydrogen, clean technology power, and emission abatement, that is mainly methane abatement. So it means that we have a different type of solution. Just to let me say, double click on what is meaning emission abatement. So emission abatement for us is to tackling flare, venting, and fugitives emission of methane. And so this is meaning that considering the different type of emission, we need to have a different type of solution. As a company, we have a core portfolio that is coming from rotating equipment and services. Based on that, we develop some technology that are focused on methane. For example, recently we announced an integrated compressor line solution in Dubai region, where we are working with the customer to deploy several machines to avoid venting. And this is a technology selection to eliminate venting by design. So this is a great example how the decision of customer was made in order to have something that is by design without emissions, but also allow us to deploy something that is a proven technology. It's not something that you need to take it to develop. And this is, I think, I would like to give a data point. So recently, the International Energy Agency declared that the 75% of the emission can be tackling in energy sector with existing technology. So we can go to something that is it's already available. And just quick one that could be beneficial for another technology that we deploy is related on the flare. Flare are something that often is not possible to completely eliminate. With our product, Flare IQ is called, we can optimize the emission and avoiding the leakage and the leakage of methane. So those are two real examples that we have. For Flare IQ, we have a 65 unit deployed in Azerbaijan. So this is something that we are proud to share here in Baku because it's something linked to the.
That's wonderful. Well, you said fugitive emissions at the very beginning. That's become my new favorite climate term that I wasn't familiar with before. So I appreciate you sharing that, and thank you for those examples. So Leah, let's move to you. The World Economic Forum has been instrumental in fostering collaboration, a huge part of what you're doing. And I'm wondering, can you share with us examples of multi-stakeholder partnerships driving the climate transition and where you've seen that having been successful?
Absolutely, thanks. So this is the age of collaboration. I think everyone would agree into that. And I wanted to make a quick disclaimer at the beginning. On the one side, it is that I personally believe that technology is the greatest enabler for sustainable and steady change when it comes to climate or for people and the planet. And second is that there's also the need for us to focus on transition technologies and not only destination technologies. So sometimes imperfect solutions today are better than perfect solutions delivered too late, right? So there's a very fine balance, a very elegant choreography that we all have to do together. And in that spirit, and answering your question, Steve, I'm going to highlight a very successful collaboration that we launched 3 years ago today at COP29 in Glasgow, which is the First Movers Coalition. This one in particular looks into destination technologies, the most advanced high-tech green solutions, right? And the problem with many of those technologies is that they are very expensive and it's very hard to scale them, right? So speed and scale remains the consistent problem. We're scratching our heads around how can we break this chicken and egg and make a tortilla instead, right? So what we did is we harnessed the purchasing power of 100 leading companies that say, hey, we're gonna put our capital and to send a very strong demand signal saying that by 2030, we're gonna procure those technologies and therefore share the risk and share the cost, if you wish, among ourselves. And then we brought the private sector into the picture as well, saying, hey, we have tools like designing policy frameworks or public procurement can also be a great enabler for that, right? And that's exactly why I think this is the boldest initiative I can think of today, because it not only gets together the 100 top companies of the world to put their skin in the game for green technologies like the ones needed for green steel, sustainable aviation fuels, or the hard-to-abate sectors in this case, but it also counts with the support of 15 governments that represent half of the world's GDP. So if you want to think about the rationale behind it, of this collaboration, it's very similar to what the governments did during COVID. With the vaccine makers, which was the governments were telling the pharma companies, hey, build those vaccines, we're going to buy them. So that those that were putting the money at risk knew that they would either get a return or at the very least not lose their initial investment. So I think that's a great example of a good public-private collaboration and about 100 leading companies walking the talk, showing the art of the possible. And I'm glad to share here with you today, 3 years after, that the demand signal for these green technologies of the First Movers Coalition companies today is the biggest demand signal in history from the private sector for green techs, and it represents $16 billion. So, I mean, more to come. That's not going to be enough, but that's certainly a great start.
Definitely. Thank you. Mauricio, Accenture has been leading large emissions-intensive organizations through their emissions journey for a long time. And I'm wondering, can you share specifically examples of strategies and technologies that are helping them in these journeys?
Yeah, very happy to. By the way, congratulations to the forum on already that first milestone. So like I said before, we also firmly believe, very aligned with some of the comments here on the panel regarding the power of data and digital to massively enable decarbonization. So perhaps if we come back to the methane point, for instance, and just to give a sense of the scale, if we got rid of all the methane that's being produced upstream, or midstream, downstream by the energy sector, that would have a greater environmental impact than electrifying, most of the global fleet of vehicles. So it's a huge lever, and a lever that with technologies, as Ilaria said, with technologies that are available today, as the IEA has said as well. And so, we need the industrial technologies, but then the data and digital technologies are key components of that. The AI, for example, that delivers the optimization, that runs, the algorithms that help, for example, optimize, flaring hardware technologies. That's a digital capability. For example, in downstream, and this is in the public domain, with Duke Energy Corporation in North America, they have a large downstream retail distribution network with natural fugitive emissions of the natural gas. There we deploy satellites and other types of sensors to capture the picture of the fugitive emissions that helps dispatch in a more efficient way the field forces that can go and remediate the leak. And now we're there, I can't mention the client, but in upstream energy production, we're deploying similar technologies but combining them with even more data sources like drones, like ground level sensors and others, putting them all together to optimize the energy procurement and use of upstream production, and that's delivering value in terms of higher productivity and value also in terms of lower compliant costs for some of the carbon costs that those companies are facing, when they have to pay for the emissions that are actually being produced. So, just a couple of examples where we're, addressing a major lever for climate change, that is methane, and where the combination of data, digital technologies with hardware technologies are permitting us to more rapidly reduce the emissions.
And a quick follow-up, I'm assuming then that based on the success of those innovations, that itself is leading to identification of other opportunities, other technologies. I mean, it has a bit of a flywheel effect. Is that correct?
Yeah, so this morning we were on a panel with several utilities and technology companies exploring the impact of data centers and AI on the energy system. And I think what most people will immediately think about is, these data centers, this a huge amount of energy consumption that's coming online. What's that going to do in terms of emissions and so forth? But we have to look at the supply and demand side as well. The scope for these technologies to, just on efficiency and optimization across all sorts of systems, whether those are electricity grid systems, whether those are manufacturing systems, whether those are even scientific development tools, new materials, is pretty enormous. It's hard to quantify. I think it's really tough to say when is the point at which data and AI is going to deliver a net positive impact into the climate versus the energy consumption that we're going to have to deploy to have that kind of capability. But we're optimistic that it's going to happen, within the next few years.
So we've talked about technology, we've talked about innovation. I want to pivot now and talk a little bit about leadership. And I'd like to ask each of you, and Larry, we'll go back to you to start this off. How can leaders foster a culture where these types of innovations, these types of technologies can be developed and can thrive? I mean, where have you seen that working, where real leadership has been demonstrated that has enabled a lot of the great successes that each of you have been talking about?
So technology is, of course, linked to innovation, linked to the people. So it's crucial to enabling diversity in workforce, inclusion in terms of bring the idea in and taking in consideration a different point of view that can contribute. And also I would like to leverage and as a technology company, we work a lot on partnership with customers. Laila mentioned how collaboration is important. Collaboration is a key when we are bringing idea. We need to take in consideration creativity. We need to move in something that is new. New, not just in terms of creating and developing new product, but something that is new, how we can deploy, how we can facilitate, how we can move forward on the discussion. So leadership, it's crucial to combine those elements, diversity, inclusion, in one single stream that everyone, especially people, can be a center of gravity on that. This is, I think, it's a crucial one to push.
Wonderful, wonderful, terrific place to start. Leah, what would you?
Building upon that, I think it's important to remind ourselves that as working in the climate space, we're playing the long-term game. So it's not about quick wins only, but it's about having the horizon very present. And that means also not getting distracted with the latest hype. And I do believe that AI will be incredibly helpful. It will accelerate emission reductions by optimizing efficiencies and so on. But I think that we've all seen people using AI as well in solutions that could have been solved with very easy data analytic solutions as well, right? So long-term game, making sure that the climate agenda is also not a political agenda. We're here to stay, so we need to be resilient and agile as leaders working in the space. And that comes with a bit of a visionary thinking, right? Because if we think about corporate climate action, you gotta stay ahead of the curve. You gotta anticipate what's gonna come, as in like trends for you to capitalize on. But you gotta also align that with your company bottom line, because it can't only be charity, right? Or there's not enough public money to bring us to net zero. So in which way can you not only have green technologies, but also green balance sheets, if you wish? And then maybe to finish with, I believe that inclusivity is key as well, because we know that CO2 doesn't really understand about borders, and our problem is everyone's problem. And if there's one certainty, is that we're either gonna succeed or fail as one in this race.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I am not gonna repeat the points made earlier, with which I agree. Maybe what I will add is, we mentioned the word collaboration a lot, the forum, of course, driving this agenda. This is a very thorny problem and a very complex problem and an urgent problem that has to happen at a speed and scale that's, you've probably heard the statistic when we were during COVID, which we shut down the global economy pretty much, the emissions were reduced by about 6 and 7%. That's the rate at which we need to decarbonize to get to 1.5. So, it's a big thorny problem, and we're still operating within the confines of, the market economy and the existing rules of finance and the existing rules of law. So I think a key part of leadership is that innovation and collaboration to explore where we're going to move those boundaries of the rules of the game we have today. We're seeing some cool examples around this, things we've helped out or been involved in. For instance, they're still small in the grand scheme of things, but for instance, with Shell and American Express Global Business Travel, we've created a platform to, for example, broker the use of sustainable aviation fuel. As Accenture, our biggest footprint is Scope 3 business travel. We want to be able to say we're traveling on a low carbon fuel or zero carbon transport where possible. We try to take as much trains and bicycles as we can, but when we do have to fly, we'd like it to be low carbon fuel. Shell wants to produce and scale its biofuel production capability. Well, why don't we create a technology solution that can help do that? There's many other examples where suppliers of energies, of materials, are coming together with their customers, with their off-takers, to work in a different way than just the traditional supply and demand of products, because together they need to decarbonize the value chain. So I think leadership in that space of innovating with our customers, innovating with our supply chain partners to do things differently is where we can continue to move the needle.
When you think about how this is going to be solved, and this is for anybody that might have an opinion, just as a follow-up to that, and listening to this conversation, each of you have mentioned individual specific examples, not quick wins, not to minimize them, but kind of individual examples. Are we going to meet the challenges through the aggregation of a lot of like these kind of little wins? Are we going to win it through kind of like big massive changes? Is it something in between? Because here, as I've been listening to the conversations, I hear a little bit of both, and I'm trying to think like, okay, well, 10 years from now, for example, as we look at how we've gone on the climate transition, is it going to be the series of a lot of little wins? Each company's kind of doing what they can do, each individual doing what they can do. Or is it going to be, hey, there's going to be some massive systemic changes? I mean, I think about COVID, for example, that was unforced, but that was a really big change that certainly had an impact. I'm curious if you have any perspective on that.
I'm happy to give it a crack. So I do believe that as human beings, as a species, we're programmed to think about innovation in gradual terms. scoping out or not really having the capacity to scope in breakthroughs or technology breakthroughs in particular. So this panel is about technologies, and I think we got to remind ourselves that there can be major breakthroughs that can get us there faster potentially, right? So we need to think, how can we leverage them? AI can certainly be one. As you were saying though, it's worse today, better tomorrow. Let's see where we manage to get this inflection point. But we got to keep an eye out on the breakthroughs for sure.
Go, please. No, go. Okay, so I would like to add combination of disruption, some disruptive, let me say, occasion or event like COVID was can shake, I would like to say, the situation. It's crucial to understand, I would like to say, what is the change management? So it means how much we are changing and look back what's happening. I think for me it's crucial the awareness. So sometimes it's a matter to know what we are doing. I think these kind of events are very crucial because we need to talk, we need to create like an common understanding of the topic, because the language is different, the technology we say is the same, but the application could be different. Digital, as Mauricio and Laia mentioned, it's critical to have the right speed. So we need to have something that with the right speed to move forward together, of course, step by step, of course, what is needed, sometimes in disruptive way, but it's important to communicate and to share.
I think as you were asking the question, Steve, I tend to sometimes be quite negative about this, given those numbers that I've shared, but we're also extremely creative, and when we are faced with challenges, we come up with the solutions, as we did, for example, in COVID. A data point is the U.S. administration, quite a while back, changed its stance on climate change after two massive hurricanes that hit them, Erika and Katrina. And I don't want to say we're going to advance in the bigger chunks rather than the little steps with catastrophes, but maybe the call to action is, let's please not wait for the human cost and the catastrophes for us to start catalyzing more aggressive leadership and action, because they will come if we don't move at the bigger pace. If they come, then we'll certainly move fast after those happen, but let's try to avoid them.
Well, as we get ready to kind of wind down our discussion here, next year COP30 will be in Brazil, and I'm curious, what technologies, what trends will we be talking about? Climate is a long game, so 1 year probably isn't quite as much time, at least with respect to climate, as other things. But what will we be talking about? What trends, what technologies? And maybe we'll come back this way. Mauricio, we'll start with you.
I think we'll be talking, I'm going to make a joke here, forgive me guys, but I think we'll be talking about navigation, because we'll probably be sleeping in boats and jokes aside, I say it with no disrespect to the wonderful, Belém COP30 team. It's not a big city, and so accommodation is going to be interesting. I think we're just going to be talking more and more about the role of digital technology. I mean, just from the negawatts, I think we don't use those words that often anymore, but there's an enormous amount of carbon emissions to be saved just from using energy better right across the economy. And that's a lot easier to do nowadays with digital technology. So, and that's a quick win, and it's usually negative, positive NPV right away. Energy efficiency still remains a huge opportunity, and now we can do a lot more of it with data and digital.
COP30 will mark the 10th anniversary from the Paris Agreement. So I think that my hope is that we can all reflect and try to see what have we learned throughout a decade, right? Because we've tried many, many things, and we do have a lot of data. So I'm hoping that we can use this technology at the service of these learnings and with particular data points, right, to see what is most useful, what is going to help us cut the biggest chunk of emissions in the shortest period of time, because we're going to be in the midpoint of the crucial decade. Be it CCS, deployment and scale, be it AI and climate for efficiency measures. We don't really care as long as it's based on what we've learned over the past decade, so that we can move faster.
Not just a technology. I think it's a combination of technology, financing, and policy. So I think we need to have three of them, then collaborate on the scenario. Technology, of course, we mentioned several times, digital could be crucial. Combining with existing technology that we have in the space, energy, I completely agree with what Mauricio says. So energy efficiency is something that can bring value now if it's combined with the financing and policy as well. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to deploy and talk about just technology. Financing, because we see that it's not easy to get accessible money, accessible budget to do that. So it's in the conversation sometimes it's a challenge to finalize, to move from commitment to action. And the third one, policy, because it's crucial to have the good relation with community, with the government, in order to push, not to give the starting point that can be a differentiator to have to move on the action side.
Interesting, and a really good perspective. Okay, I'm looking at the clock here. We have 2 minutes, so I'm actually going to tack on another just quick follow-up. You've all shared what you think we'll be talking about a year from now at COP30. What are we talking about at COP40? You know, you now do a 10-year horizon, and this can be a rapid fire, just a super quick answer if you like, and we'll go back to you and
like a dreamer or so. Everyone take these kind of things as a priority and personal commitment, really, in action. This is for me will be the great result in 10 years from now. As we start with the different other topics, so think about that we can look back and we made a real progress and action deployed and as a standard for everyone.
I love that. I love that.
For COP40, I would wish for us to be able to showcase how much economic growth has the green transition brought in terms of revenue, GDP growth, inequalities that have closed up the gap, and jobs that have been created ultimately.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Laia. You know, going on assuming a positive outcome of the direction of travel, and that we get the finance for the more ambitious plans in COP30, and that cycle continues. I was thinking maybe COP40 won't be that important. We're already in full execution mode. Emissions are falling 7% per year, and you know the politicians get together just to kind of tick boxes and track that it's all going well. But maybe if we're successful, maybe it ceases to be as important as event as it is right now.
Well, that's a fantastic, optimistic way to end our discussion. Mauricio, Laia, Ilaria, thank you so much for lending your insights, and thank you all for joining, and that'll wrap us up.
Thank you.
Thank you.